everyone! My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today we are finally doing another BDSM 101 video, and this time we're talking about temperature play. And I think this one is a really great subject because a lot of people just sort of assume they know everything there is to know about it and just sort of gloss over it. And I bet it goes way deeper than you're probably expecting. So let's go ahead and get into it. First of all, what is temperature play? Temperature play is a subset of BDSM activities that include using heat and cold in order to produce sensation. This, of course, kind of included in the definition, is oftentimes considered to be a subset of sensation play, but can actually go along with a ton of different kinks, like bondage, sadomasochism, and splashing, to name a few. And I want to talk about why people enjoy this, because I think, like with sensation play, a lot of people assume temperature play is like a just for newbies thing. Oh, that's like something from movies, and you just do it until you get into doing real BDSM. It is seen as a stepping stone into doing actual kinks, and temperature play is something you eventually leave behind. You grow out of like an old winter coat, and I don't think that always has to be the case. Yes, it can be a good introduction into BDSM, and a lot of people do enjoy it during that phase of their exploration. However, it doesn't only have to be that. It can be something that creates a ton of different types of scenes that can be very mild, and they can even be so intense that they would make the average advanced player blush. Not to mention, BDSM is not always about doing the most extreme things possible. Who cares if you prefer a cold butter knife running over your back to a whipping or a flogging? It's about what you enjoy. It's about producing mutually pleasurable scenes. And if that happens with pain, great. If that happens with sensation, also great. It's about what you enjoy and what you want to do, not some expectation you may have gotten from social media. But that tangent aside, there are tons of reasons why people enjoy temperature play. I think the primary one that a lot of people will think of is that it can be relaxing and sensual, like a warm oil massage. It can also be about pain and sadomasochism in a way that you can't really get to with paddling or with a flogger. It can also be about being reinvigorated and feeling recentered, because it can sort of be a spa-like experience. Suddenly getting shocked with a cold shower or having a ton of ice cubes go down your back can be similar to a cold plunge pool at a spa, or sitting under a cool waterfall, even just putting your feet into a cool creek in the summertime. It can be very much along those lines. Of course, as well, it can be erotic. People enjoy warm sensations because it might help them feel more drawn to their partner. It might help you feel more comfortable in your nudity, and it can also stimulate blood flow. Likewise, on the reverse side of things, cold can also be similar. It can be shocking and exciting to suddenly be, in a cold snap, more or less physically with your body, having again those ice cubes run down your back, or suddenly having a cold blast of air on your face. That, I think, tends to go more with the mental side of it rather than the physical. I think the warm side of things tend to be more physical and emotional, and the cold tends to be more mental in terms of how it can be erotic for people, but that is just my personal observation. But what are some of the ways that people actually do temperature play? Well, a quick Google search will give you a dozen articles from outlets like Women's Health and Cosmopolitan, all giving you the same stereotypical expectations. Brushing an ice cube over somebody's nipple, or eating ice cream off their thigh. And while trying a cooling or warming lubricant can be an accessible way for trying out this type of sensation, especially if you are trying out BDSM for the first time with an otherwise vanilla partner, it can be so much more than that. Some of the most common types of temperature play you'll see within the BDSM community include things like wax play, which is putting warm or hot candle wax over somebody's body. It can also be things like fire play, which include things like fire drumming or fire flushing, and putting a flame very close to someone's skin before either very quickly putting it out or removing it. This can also include the related area that I've talked about before on my channel of fire cupping, which is using a glass cup and a flame to produce a low pressure area inside of a cup, which then can be used for essentially massage purposes, causing bruising and other sorts of intense sensation. Ice is an interesting element here because it is both extremely common and also extremely controversial at the same time. As we talked about with the magazines, thanks to media representation through things like 50 Shades and 9.5 Weeks, the public has had a lot of exposure to the more mild side of it, using an ice cube over somebody's nipple, putting an ice cube in their mouth perhaps, and so a lot of people tend to think of that as like what temperature play is. But when you get into the more BDSM side of things, ice quickly gets very extreme. People freezing dildos prior to insertion, people using icicles as dildos, people suddenly being exposed to extreme cold through an ice cold shower or a forced ice bath, or even putting somebody in bondage and then tossing them out into the snow. Obviously, all of that can be very controversial for a number of reasons. Back in the day on Tumblr, anytime this would come up, and I remember I actually, if I remember correctly, I think I got called out for this because at the time I had a relationship or I had a relationship kind of recently where I had a partnership where one of my punishments involved ice, and they were like, oh my god, it's so dangerous, hypothermia and frostbite and just a bunch of stuff, like even the ice melting in a way where it could get really sharp and actually like cut the skin. That was a concern. So ice can be risky, it can be dangerous, especially when the idea of what temperature play can be gets just compressed down into, oh, it's really simple, it's really light, it's really fun, and then we categorize ice going over a nipple as being the same thing as using an ice dildo. Yeah, those are not really the same thing, as you can probably tell in terms of risk. Luckily, I do think there are a few happy medium choices between these two extremes that people rarely talk about. For example, what about combining hot and cold into one scene? Just a single ice cube might be kind of underwhelming, but what about if instead you layer on the sensation? Picture somebody lying on their back, and you start with a nice like warm coconut oil massage, and then you move into chocolate sauce, and then finally once you put the warm chocolate sauce on their body, then you finish off with a layer of frozen or fridge cold fruit and then some ice cubes on top, maybe putting an ice cube in their mouth or saving a big wedge of maybe sliced apple or orange to use as a gag. That might seem a little bit more involved and a lot more enjoyable than just a single ice cube. Plus, it's also delicious and totally edible. So if you want to slowly lick everything off your partner's body before getting into another scene, or you want to do it as the finale before you lead into more intimate times perhaps, that's also very doable. Who needs overpriced, expensive, edible body paints from Lovers when you can do something like this with like $10 worth of ingredients from your local grocery store? And if you're looking for something more traditionally kinky, how about an ice brand? See, I told you there would be things in this video that were going to make advanced players blush. Now, the Submissive Feminist has a really good blog write-up on how to do this step by step, and rest assured it sounds more extreme than it really is, and there are no cattle irons involved as far as I'm aware. You really only need water, salt, paper towels, and a customizable ice cube tray of your choice. That could be just whatever you have in your fridge, or you could go all out and get like a custom silicone one from Etsy or somewhere in between and get sort of a fun, neat design from somewhere on Amazon. That can be a really fun activity to do. Now, this is higher risk. I don't want to make it seem like it's nothing. It's definitely, it's sort of like a happy medium between like a temporary welt and like a permanent mark. Typically with things like ice branding, it does cause an injury to the skin. However, it does heal slowly over time. Everyone's body is different though. Everyone has different immune responses. Everyone has different skin health and different microbiomes and stuff. And so for some people, these ice marks can last for a couple of weeks up to a couple of months. The longest I've ever seen or heard of one lasting is maybe a year. And so I think this is a really good choice if you are someone in a power exchange relationship and you are wanting to maybe go in the direction of a more permanent thing like a piercing or a tattoo or a permanent locking collar. Maybe trying out an ice brand first is a good way to see, do I want this? How does it feel? How does it change my relationship? And work your way up before making that really big, more permanent commitment. And did I mention that temperature play makes a wonderful punishment tool? And I mean that in both senses. Punishment as well as punishment. While it might seem kind of extreme to just like force someone into a cold shower, you can do that in a lower level way by having someone put their hands in a bucket of ice water as a punishment. If you've got a brat to deal with, especially one more on the little side of things, I think one good variation on this that is pretty uncommon, I don't really see people doing this, is to have them hold ice cubes in their hands with their arms outstretched. And they are not allowed to relax their hands or let go of any of the ice cubes. You can pair this with other punishments you might already be doing, like maybe you use corner time, and maybe the old penny nose on the wall trick isn't working the way it used to. Well, maybe ice cubes would work a little bit better instead. That can be one way you can incorporate this. And if you really want to amp up the humiliation, have them put ice cubes in their bra or in their underwear. Yeah. That can be pretty intense, both in terms of sensation and also the emotional aspect of it. I do recommend with that one especially using ice cubes that have been left out on the counter for at least a little bit beforehand to avoid any sensitive bits getting stuck to ice cubes and causing more discomfort than you actually intend. And that's something to note with this. Just having to hold ice cubes might sound pretty mild, but it can quickly become very intense, especially if you are experiencing a pretty big differential in sensation, or maybe the room is really warm, but your hands in the ice are really cold. That can actually be pretty painful. But if cold is not your thing, don't worry, I also have ideas for you too, because though I did at one point experiment with cold as a punishment for myself, I found very quickly that did not work well for me. So the warm side of things can also be a great way of experimenting with temperature play. And I absolutely just adore warm sensations. I've already talked about wax play, fire cupping, and fire play in general, both in this video and in their own other videos. So if you want to see those, links to them down below. I don't think I have one on wax play yet, but maybe that'll be the next BDSM 101 video. Anyways, I do think one good intro tool to trying out warm sensations is actually a massage candle. And I like this one over a standard wax play BDSM candle because those ones can burn much hotter and they're just like, they're more complicated to deal with. And again, it could be a whole own video just by itself, but with massage candles, they are much more accessible. If you have anything resembling a reputable sex toy store near you, you can probably find one of these. It is very common these days because they are recommended to like vanilla couples spicing it up in the bedroom for an anniversary. It's kind of like that level of thing. And I like these because they are candles, which can be, of course, romantic, and they do take a while to set up, which you might take as being a negative, but hear me out on this one. I think this is a really good way to like subtly signal to your partner you want to do a scene, right? Like maybe you light the candle, you put it on the mantle, you put it on the kitchen island, maybe you're having a dinner date night, you have the house to yourself, no kids, no roommates, and maybe you put that massage candle as the centerpiece on your dining table. That might be a pretty good hint you want to do a scene later. That can be a fun way to get started in actually introducing BDSM without having to be like, tonight I would do a scene with you. Would you like that? Like having a conversation like that obviously can be really awkward, and this can be a good way of like introducing that idea without having to be so blunt and so direct. And if you already do other types of BDSM, this can be a good thing to have as sort of like on the like literal back burner, I suppose, when you are doing another type of play. If you have a secure, safe place to put a candle, leave it with an open flame for a little while, you can put that there, do your scene, and have that ready for aftercare or for winding the scene down and changing maybe the mood of the scene and just getting ready to wrap things up. I could think this can be such a beautiful little surprise for people, though not, when I say surprise, don't literally just pour someone, like don't pour wax on somebody's skin without saying anything about it first, like check in. But you know, I mean a surprise in the sense of like, you know, introducing it as like, hey, I prepared this for you, do you want to try this, like type of surprise. You know, maybe talk about it beforehand, don't have it be a total surprise, but you know, it can be a nice difference from your usual aftercare routine or the normal way that you might typically wind up a BDSM scene. And if you don't already know how to use a massage candle, it's a very similar concept to a massage oil or a lotion, except for it's basically pre-warmed up for you. What you do is you wait for a pretty good sized melt pool to form in the candle. Then you can pour it out either directly into your hands or onto the person's body. Do not do this from like super close, like stay far away, stay far up, and then get closer if you want the sensation to be more intense. But basically, get the oil onto whatever you're going to get it on, then you can begin the massage. I think a lot of people assume like back and shoulders is the way you go with this, and those can be really wonderful, but don't overlook other parts of the body like the feet, because especially if you like tickle torture, adding in a little bit of tickly foot massage at the very end, that can be a really fun little treat. And if you can't use candles or an open flame, don't worry, there are still a ton of options out there for you. I think one of my favorite examples of how to do this without having an open flame is to actually warm up really large serving spoons or forks, like the kinds you'd use for like a Christmas dinner. Like get those, the really, really big ones are the best. Of course, other silverware, if you have it, would be fine here too, but the really big stuff I think is good for like a more enveloping sensation. What you do is you take those metal implements and you put them in warm water. You can also do this with cold water if you want a cold sensation, or like one of each or a couple of each. Anyways, put it in the water of your desired temperature, and then you can run it over the person's body, down the back, onto the thighs, anywhere you really want to, because that is one of the great things about stuff like this is with impact play, we are so used to having to be in like certain safe zones that we kind of forget about actually incorporating the whole body into a scene. And with something like this, you can go in the armpits, you can go in the elbow, you can go in the kneecaps, you can go on the neck, right? Like having somebody like drag up a fork or a spoon like from your chest onto your neck and like directing your eye gaze. Oh, so delicious. Such a good little moment there. It's like the subtle things with this I think really make such a big difference. And if you are someone that does enjoy more pain and you want to find different ways of doing that, I think this can actually be a pretty good unconventional way of incorporating pain into a scene, because you can take either those ice cold or very warm implements that you have warmed up, your two really big like silver dining spoons or whatever, and then you can do a little bit of drumming. You can do a little spanking scene on somebody's thighs, on their butt, on their breasts. That can be a really enjoyable and again non-conventional way of engaging in pain play. One of my favorite suggestions for temperature play is actually for service. And I love this because again, a lot of people think, oh, temperature play is for bottoms, it's this, that. Like, you can enjoy temperature play as a dominant, as a top, when you are receiving service. And for this, I really want to lean into the relaxation quality that temperature play can have and really go more in that direction. Like basically setting up a mini spa day for your partner. Think about having steamed warm towels over their neck or over their legs and feet, using a tingly peppermint foot lotion, or maybe having one of those like cooling gel eye packs you can use. Those are like really awesome, reusable, and work way better than just silly old cucumbers. And if you really want to go that extra mile, how about a warm paraffin dip for their feet and for their hands? I mean, they've had to work so hard taking care of you and keeping you in line, they probably deserve that extra TLC, right? Or at least that can be the case for some relationships. I think it can be really great to play around with all the ways that you can use sensation to make your partner feel something. That can be relaxation, it can be pain, it can be fear almost in a way, right? Because let's say you have like a warm fork or like a ice cold spoon or knife running over their body. They're not really sure, is it going to go here? Is it going to go there? You know, dragging it over the curve of the breast or up onto the neck or on the back of the neck even, or even like unconventional spots like the armpit or behind the ear, right? Like that might be really like spooky and hard to handle and feel weird. And then you have to sit and deal with that. And for some people, having to sit and deal with that discomfort is so delicious. And those are just some of my ideas for how you can use temperature play as part of the BDSM scene. Of course, this is not meant to be an exhaustive list, just a few key ideas to get you started. Really with this, I want y'all to be creative. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below for what your ideas are for temperature play scenes. What have you done in the past? What have you enjoyed before? And I really just do not want anyone to feel limited with this. If you love bondage and sensory deprivation, how about using that cooling gel eye mask either instead of or layered with your typical blindfold? And if you're little, how about a nice warm bath time? Really lean into that feeling of warmth and how that's an expression of caretaking and affection from your dominant or from your caretaker, your daddy, whoever it is, even from just yourself, right? Just really lean into that warm sensation, feeling that warmth, affection, love, caretaking, whatever it is, and just taking that with you. That can be so relaxing. It can be great aftercare. And if you are somebody that is a masochist, completely different thing here. If you are somebody who's a masochist, see how much more intense your scene feels when you have to go through your next caning with your hands in ice water at the same time. Yeah, that might be pretty challenging. But all of that being said, do not feel embarrassed to start small. If you want to do one ice cube, do that. If you want to do warm massage lotion, do that. Just go at your own pace, start small, work your way up, and see what you enjoy and don't enjoy and build from there. Even if it's as simple as just doing a spanking with a heating pad under you next time. That is a really good thing to start to try to see how it changes your scenes, changes your mood, changes the way you process pain. Temperature is so key to the way we feel about so many things. Our emotions, how we process pain, how we interpret that pain in the first place. It can make a really big difference. So don't overlook the power of temperature and how it can affect you in your scene. A lot of people, and I haven't mentioned this yet, do feel like they're able to better process pain in a warm environment. So you can use that as a tool when you play, right? If you have a really heavy masochist that you could run them over with a truck and they wouldn't feel it, maybe making the room really cold, hitting them with cold metal implements might make that scene that little bit more intense that they're looking for. Or if you have kind of lower pain tolerance, you want something more sensual and relaxing, and typically your pain tolerance is lower, having things be warm, the room being warm, having a warm weighted blanket, or maybe like a warm one of those microwavable stuffed animals, that could be a really, really key way. Or maybe you kind of figure out, okay, I thought I wasn't really a masochist, but with the right environment, with the right temperature, with feeling warm and secure and safe because those things go together for me, now I can do so much more with my play. So temperature play, really powerful, very much overlooked. And as just a really, really final note here, I do want to say that no matter how small your scenes are, especially if you are playing with things like ice and open flames, things can get dangerous very quickly. Depends on exactly what it is you're doing, but do not underestimate this at the same time. Please be prepared to deal with whatever emergencies may come your way based on the particular type of play you're doing. Keep your first aid kit close at hand, and just be aware that prolonged exposure to extreme heat or cold can lead to adverse health outcomes, and to be aware of what it is you're engaging in. Don't start with plunging somebody in an ice bath for 45 minutes. You could have something like maybe a health condition that increases your intolerance to extreme temperatures, and you will need to be aware of that and account for it when you are planning to incorporate temperature into your scenes. So be careful, make sure you stay hydrated, make sure you have a first aid kit on hand, and you have a way to deal with things as and if they arise. And with all that being said, I hope you all enjoyed this and you learned something in this video. If you did enjoy it, please let me know in a comment down below. I would love to hear your thoughts, your ideas, your stories, anything you want to share in a comment down below. And if you've not already, please do subscribe, because I make videos twice a week about all sorts of kink and BDSM related content. That could be BDSM 101 videos, it could be deep dives, it could be social things, it could be reaction videos. We do a lot of different stuff on this channel, and I'm very proud of that. And also, if you do want to support what I do, the best way to do that is with Patreon, and link to that will be down below. If you do already support there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.